You are listening to the Religica Theolab podcast in the Center for Ecumenical and Interreligious Engagement at Seattle University.
Welcome. Since 1970, Jim Dumont has pursued the cultural and spiritual roots of the traditional Anishinabe Way of Life. He retired in 2000 as Professor of Native Studies at the University of Sudbury, Laurentian University. Today, Jim teaches in the Indigenous Masters Program with the Seven Generations Institute. Take a listen.
Your vantage point as a native elder looking at what dominant culture is doing to the globe, what do you see?
I don't know, it doesn't look too good. We have a prophecy about this time that's coming. It could be a great time or it could be a time of doom and gloom. Basically, it says that we as Indigenous people, we have to find our way back to our own traditional ways, our given ways. And the descendants of those who came here, who should have come with the face of brotherhood, came with the face of destruction. We have a chance to build a great nation between us, or amongst us, providing that we find our way back to our ways, and that those who came here find the face of brotherhood that they should have come wearing. And it says they will be given a choice. And that's the choice between the spiritual road and this would be like the way of technology or the way of, if that happens, if we could in time, that's a way distance in time from now, but we could build a great nation together. But if that doesn't happen, then the destruction that was brought here will continue. But everybody is involved in it now. It's a global thing.
Yeah.
And it looked good for a while in this country. Finally got a prime minister who was paying attention, but as his term goes on, he's kind of, I don't know if he's giving in or he's trying to please everybody. The science is there, and the evidence is there. It's created by humans or exacerbated by humans, and we have to do something about it. I think, as the prophecy is saying, what is the spiritual road? Well, we have to read the spirit into everything. That's the way everything was created to be. It's so that the spirit could live in this world, could experience life in this physical reality that we live here. The spirit enjoys to come here, to experience that. Spirit is in all things. It means that we're related to everything. We're all children of the same mother, the earth. So we're all related. And us, as Indigenous people, if we go back to our original way of thinking, we're culturally obliged to have in our interests a good life for all of our relations, all of our relatives. It's all of the animal world, the plant world, the earth herself, all of the waters, which is her life blood. And what joins us all together is we depend on that water for life. Somebody already said, water isn't a right, water is life.
Yeah.
And we get as far as talking about animals. We can think of our animals as pets, and we can give them some kind of personality or something a little more than what we consider animals to be. But we can't seem to take the next step, which is to recognize that the spirit is in all things. Animals are living beings, and they're persons. So in this great family, that's what we're obliged to maintain a good relationship with everyone.
Do you think some Indigenous people have kind of lost that path because of the impact from white people and, everything that happened to your people with the invasion?
Yeah, the more we leave behind our original way of thinking and adopt the ways of thinking that was brought here, we end up becoming complicit in all of some stuff that's happening. Because we become dependent on it. And so if the hydro goes out, we're affected by it too. If this material and technological way of life changes, we're affected by it. if it goes down, we're affected by it. We can't escape from it now. We live within it and depend on it.
Can you say a little more about the prophecy? Any details of that you could share?
Well, that's kind of generally it. And there are 7 prophecies altogether. There's the 4th one. By the time we get to the 4th prophet, talks about the one day new and different people would come to this part of the world. Mm-hmm. They would be a light-skinned people who would come wearing the face of brotherhood or the face of death, the face of destruction.
Either one.
It would be either one. So there were indicators, like be careful, because those 2 faces can look alike. It's hard to discern between the 2 of them. They'll come bringing a promise of, English would be salvation, yes, and not to accept that promise. Not to fall for that promise, because it'll end up being a false promise. And if you take that, things that will happen as a result of that will lead to the almost destruction, almost total loss of our original way of life. If he came with no weapons in his hands, then maybe he would come with the face of brotherhood. He would bring many gifts with him, and those gifts would help us to live would ease our life, I guess, the way that we live. But those things that he brought would bring with it a system. And if we weren't careful, if we accepted that system, we would end up destroying life around us too.
And was there any reference to, climate change or earth changes, or the idea that they were, these white people were going to just mess the balance of things up and they would be held to pay?
Well, it said if they came wearing the face of destruction, yes, you would know it when the life that depended on the water to live, meaning the fish, the water life, wouldn't be able to live in the environment that they were in the waters. You'd see them floating belly up on the waters, almost like in mass. That's when you know that that they came wearing the face of destruction. And water would become unfit to drink. The cup of life, which is water, would become the cup of death. And that's thought to be alcohol. Water, which is supposed to bring life, instead of that, would bring death. But it could mean a lot of other things today. Listening to that man this morning, the waters that he was talking about, the tar sands of it, but the mining in that area puts arsenic into the earth, into the water, and into the permafrost. And that's one of the most deadly things that there are. So the water we depend on for life, can't drink the water that in his youth you could just dip your cup into the river and drink that water into the lake. Can't do that anymore. And that's true everywhere. There's no place so remote that it's free from the touch of that anymore. Yeah. But it isn't, I don't think it's as simple as if only we could become spiritual people, everything would get better. But we have to change our way of thinking. It calls for a change in the way of thinking. There's always going to be this desire and need and pursuit of money and wealth. And that's going to govern our thinking about everything.
Do you think different traditions can incorporate the thinking you're talking about and still, stay true to their own tradition?
I think probably most or all indigenous spiritual beliefs have that already. Mm-hmm. It's not too much of a stretch to see how it's just beginning to talk about it. That's one of the things I talked about is maybe we need to create an institute for the study of the spirit. I think it's the more organized religions that dominate so much of the world. Spirit is still there, and I think it's there in their way of understanding, or the probability is there. Yeah. And it might be a bigger leap for them to get back to it, but they have to find a way back. Otherwise, they are going to become even more complicit in the destruction of things. I think the unity of people in terms of spirituality is dependent on acknowledging the spirit.
So it sounds like you're saying that people in any tradition have a lot to learn from indigenous view to heal the planet or keep things together.
Yeah, I think they do have a lot to learn, but there seems to be required an attitude toward change, an attitude toward, like when I was speaking there, something happened in the room, and if you could latch on to that spirit, something could happen.
So people sort of recognize what you were saying.
Yeah,
I think so. Do you think mass culture, dominant culture, has at least moved a little bit toward understanding or recognizing what you're talking about? Because it seems like 50, 60 years ago, most white people culture just didn't have a clue. Is there any progression?
I think there is. If we go back to the prophecies say that in the time of the seventh fire, which is what it says about us, is that we have to go back and find our original way of life that we were given. The people who came here, they have to find the face of brotherhood, and they have to learn about respect other people's ways, to allow them to practice those ways. That's all the face of brotherhood. But there will be evidence of the descendants of the light-skinned people who came here, that they will desire that. They will recognize that somewhere back there they lost the spirit. They're practicing religion and so on, but the spirit is missing. And they'll look in other things. Like nowadays we see it. Maybe they'll become Buddhists, or they'll be influenced by that tradition. They'll find the spirit or spirituality in something, even that they'll make it up somehow by copying. And so you'll start to notice that there was a way. This is how you recognize that time is upon us when that happens. So I think there has been a change. What concerns me is that I don't know if it's happened fast enough, or if it's happened enough. Or the other thing is that there isn't a true realization of the effects of things like climate change and how fast that's going. And it's going to escalate, because we've been able to measure scientifically that it indeed is happening. But what's scary about it is that all of that together, like the melting of the poles, is happening faster than they ever predicted. And it's a combination of all that change. And so the negative things that are happening may be happening a lot faster than the positives.
You've been listening to the Religica Theolab podcast in the Center for Ecumenical and Interreligious Engagement at Seattle University. To learn more about the center's work and for resources to be used in local communities, visit us at seattleu.edu/thecenter.